Hey there everyone, this is Andrew Kimmons with Kimmons Toolworks, and today I have another new thing, and it's something that I'm really excited about because, as always, I feel like I'm starting the video kind of the same way, but it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, but it just takes a little while for those things to manifest into reality. So we're gonna talk about this, and I'm gonna show you this new thing, and probably go over the draw knife a little bit again, just because you never know what video actually catches on and goes. So since this draw knife and this chisel are going to the same customer, I might as well talk about both. And I'm also going to actually talk about the medical update with my wife for those that are interested. I'll do that in the last part for those that aren't interested. And I also wanted to touch on I'm finally doing something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, which is write a book. And it's because I have quite a bit of downtime, you know, with my wife at physical therapy and the time out of the shop. I don't like to just sit there idle. So I'm finally doing that. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit too for those that are interested. If you're not, hey, cool. If you're here for tools, let's just talk about the tools. Today we have a really new, really cool thing. Yes, that is a giant mortise chisel. It is absolutely an enormous mortise chisel. This is made to match the framing chisels. And this is something that I have wanted to do for a very long time. For example here, let me move things around a little bit. This that's a framing chisel. This is the mortise framing chisel. I wonder if I can get the camera any closer. Not really. But anyway, framing chisel, the new mortise framing chisel, and this is in reference to a standard sized chisel and the standard sized mortise chisel. So you can get roughly an idea of just how big that is. I know this is just the blade. I don't have it in a handle yet, but you can tell. This is a 1/2 inch mortise chisel, which is a big chisel, but it's not big compared to this. This is a 1 inch framing mortise chisel, and this thing is absolutely freaking enormous. Look at this. And this has a 2-inch handle extension on it as well. It's 2 inches longer than the average framing chisel handle, and that's because the customer's framing chisels he already have this 2-inch extension on it, and he likes that extra length. So I'm willing to do things like that. I mean, these are custom tools. If you want something different and it's within the realm of possibility, I'm very willing to do it. There's some things I can't do because I have a pretty limited shop with pretty limited stuff. But if it's something I can do, I'm always willing to do it. But that definitely doesn't mean it'll be cheap to do it because, you know, have to eat and stuff. But anyway, this is the 1 inch mortise framing chisel, and I even had to make the ferrule custom because the material that I bought for the ferrules, I estimated what size I would need, and then when the project came together, I was like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work. It's gonna look stupid. So I had to just turn my own, and it's just 30 thousandths thick, like they all are. All of the ferrules that I use are 30 thousandths thick, but they vary in size depending on what type of chisel. But this is it, and I was actually extremely happy with the heat treatment on this. We just came right up and touched about 63 Rockwell, which is a very difficult thing to do with a chunk of steel this big. You know, as we discussed in the previous video about heat treating, excuse me, for a piece of steel this big and this thick, it requires a soak time that actually penetrates the material and essentially melts the carbon all the way into the center of the steel. And at that point, you have to quench it rapidly enough, which pulling that much heat out of a piece of material this big is, I mean, there's a lot of heat, and you have to pull that heat out rapidly, otherwise it doesn't harden. So my system of quenching works extremely well, and I was very happy to see that it worked extremely well even on a blade this big, because this is just such a meaty blade. And I'll tell you, even with a 1/2-inch mortise chisel, which this thing seems tiny compared to this, it seems like with these that heat is just coming out of these forever, because it's deep within the core of the material. And so I just could not believe how long heat was coming out of this, but it was controlled very well, and it ended up absolutely perfect, and I couldn't be happier with it. It just needs honed. I haven't actually honed it yet and done the final bevel. You can see it's not actually sharp yet. But if you want one of these, Andrew at KimmonsHandTools.com, and I think what I'm going to do is do these from 1/2-inch to 1.5 inches. And the 1/2-inch ones will be tall, like this is. So, as you can tell, that the height of the smaller ones is not nearly as tall. So, the 1/2-inch will be tall like this, but 1/2-inch in width. And, you know, timber framers like big mortise chisels. This is a big mortise chisel. Now, these definitely are not cheap, but the amount of work that goes into these is absolutely astronomical. And these also have the compression caps, just like the framers, so that the likelihood of splitting anything is almost as close to zero as you can get. And the tang on this monster is a 1/2-inch diameter tang that runs all the way down to about here. I mean, this thing's just an absolute beast. So, Andrew at KimmonsHandTools.com, and you could even, I think what I'll do, even if you want to do a set of these to go with a set of framers that you have, that set would probably be like 1/2, 3/4, 1, 1 1/4, and 1 1/2, like a 5-piece kind of thing. And yeah, so, or singles as always. I'm going to move this, and we're going to talk a little bit about this little draw knife again. And it's a little bit smudgy because a lot of times it takes me a couple of takes to get a video right, and I have them all perfectly clean before the video, and then they get smudgy. Anyway, the modular draw knife that we covered in the last video, these go together. They're going to the same customer. But this is the same draw knife, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I never know what video actually gets exposure, and I want people to see this. And a lot of times it's the big chisel videos that get exposure. So right here we have what may be, I'm not going to make this claim because I don't know, maybe the world's first modular draw knife. Modular meaning the blade, you can take it out, you can replace it with a bigger blade, you can have 3 or 4 blades on hand that are all sharp and then swap them out if you use them a lot. You can, you know, if you want one in CPM M4, you can just order one and pop it in there. You don't have to buy the whole tool, because the whole tool isn't cheap. And this makes it so much easier to sharpen accurately, because I know quite a few people that don't particularly care for sharpening a draw knife, and it can be very difficult to get a precise edge on a draw knife. So it really helps when you can just pop the blade out, and you can lap it like a regular blade and hone it like a regular blade, and the bevel's big enough to do it freehand easily. And that just slides off, that slides off, and there you have the construction of the modular draw knife. And this is the small size. I'm going to do these in 3 different sizes. But there's the blade, and there you go. You can lap it until it looks lapped across the back. And what I do, since this isn't a hyper precise type of blade like a lot of the precision chisels are, what I do is I throw a 1500 grit piece of silicon carbide sandpaper, just wet dry sandpaper, on a DMT plate and spray it with oil. Just lap. It gets it, I mean, flat. It's a little smudgy, but it's flat. And then you have that flat reference to hone it, and the bevel's big enough to where you just easily do it freehand. Just do it like that, and then just until you get a tiny little burr. Snap it off just like in my honing video, and then start on a couple leading strokes, and even if you want, I did finish these after that with just a couple laps on a strop impregnated with 1 micron chromium oxide, just to get that peak sharpness, and boom, there it is. And the handles, you can see it fits into there like that, threaded on the back, and it's countersunk. And what I did was I left, you can see, I left the machining marks on there, but it's polished because I thought it looked cool. Honestly, I thought it looked really cool. So, and I could have done away with that, but, and my wife even saw it and she was like, oh wow, that's cool with that on there. And so I was glad she thought that too. Now, these screws have to be custom modified to fit this, and it's a custom length to fit this. So you don't want to over tighten these or strip anything. You don't have to be Hercules on this stuff. They just need to be snugged with a decent quality 5/32 hex key. And if you do ever strip out or damage the hardware or strip the head out or anything like that, I can obviously, I know what I need to do, and I can just send you some screws that'll fit it. But the heads need machined a little bit to fit and look proper, because I wanted to use a big enough screw to have meaty threads, but that big enough screw to have the meaty threads came with an increase in head diameter, and I didn't want that thickness up here. So to get all the proportions to work out the way I wanted, I had to do that a little bit custom, but that's okay. So I don't know if anybody makes these. Honestly, this was the idea that came out of my head. I'm not a huge fan of doing normal because everybody does normal. That's why normal is normal. I'm bored of normal. I like to do things differently and unique and come up with some cool ideas, and it's like, hey, maybe this is even patentable. I don't know. I honestly don't really care. And if somebody steals the idea and patents it, I don't care about that either. I got more ideas. Like, it's not like I'm out of ideas with that. So anyway, and I think the gentleman receiving these actually watches the YouTube videos as well, so you'll be happy to know that these will be going out, and they probably should have gone out a few days ago, but the holidays has slowed me down a little bit, and I certainly appreciate everyone's patience, because it's been a lot to keep up on, especially with my wife's health issues as well. And leading into that, I think I'll talk a little bit about my book that I'm working on. And the reason why, I've always wanted to write a book, and now I kind of forced into having the time to do it, in a sense, because I spend quite a bit of time sitting in waiting rooms and things like that, because my wife is going to physical therapy a lot and she has appointments and things, and that leaves me sitting and waiting a lot, and I really don't like to waste my time, especially when there's things in life that I want to accomplish, and writing a book is one of those things. Now, it's a philosophy book, and because I'm definitely a philosophy nerd, and I can't help that. Science and philosophy historically has always been very closely related, and I'm very drawn to both science and philosophy, and always have been. And so my whole concept was, I think everybody can agree that the world is in a pretty chaotic state, and people just aren't very happy for the most part. It's not to say everybody isn't, but you could probably go ask 9 out of 10 people if they're happy with the direction of society, or if they're genuinely happy. And I don't think people, for the most part, are. And I think a lot of people are worried about the direction society is heading. And that's a big problem if the majority of people are worried about the direction of society. So, as always, philosophy has a massive pull on the state of the world and the direction of the world. Philosophy sort of leads it, and it always has. And you can see philosophical theories begin to slowly over time almost become embodied in a sense in a society. And that makes philosophy the greatest tool or the most powerful weapon known to man, because philosophy is a weapon that could cause entire civilizations to destroy themselves. And I feel that has largely been maybe accidentally used over the last 100 years or so. And so you go back to the old Nietzschean question that underpins this problem. And Nietzsche was one of really the only couple philosophers and writers that pointed out what he called the death of God, and why he did have, I think everybody had concerns for that, because there's an underlying question underneath all of that, where if you break away from the transcendent morality that underlies the fabric of society, then what? You know, in a sense, what is powerful enough? What is transcendent enough to keep a society or an entire civilization from descending into complete chaos? That's a very real question. And because you have to look at our entire legal system is predicated on Christian values for the most part. And that's what underpins our legal system. And that's what underpins our human rights and our sense of, you know, equality in a lot of sense is under those types of things underlie that. Though that's not to say that's directly where they descend from. A lot of it came from our own intuition of what right and wrong is. But that old question of, you know, if people break with the fundamentals of just the transcendent, what happens? And what can happen can be very dangerous. Also, you know, there's another side that argues that what descends from those morals is dangerous. And as always, reality is somewhere in the middle. But I happened to stumble upon a system, a philosophical system, and I wasn't even really necessarily trying to do it, but a philosophical system that is rooted in, you know, reality. Like, we can scientifically see evidence of this system playing out. And it's a mental frame shift a little bit. And then all of a sudden all the pieces go together and it makes perfect sense. And I think it could possibly, and I don't know, but I think it could be the answer to that old Nietzschean question of if you break with the transcendent, why would you be good at all? And I think this actually provides scientific evidence for why you would be good, and it relates the topics of, you know, truth, falsehood, good, evil, everything just falls into place with it. And it freaked me out when I stumbled upon this. And my wife asked me the evening when I stumbled upon this, she was like, "Are you okay? Like, you're pale. So, like, something's wrong." And I had goosebumps, and it freaked me out. And since then, I've been trying to break this to see where it's flawed, and I can't. I can't break this system. And that's not to say it can't be broken. Honestly, I hope somebody can. But that's part of the reason why it's going to be published in this book, is because if there are philosophers, people out there that can break it, I would actually consider that to be good, because it's unsettling to me that these values like good, evil, truth, false, what's a fact, things like that have been debated for 2,000 years, and people have gone in circles over this, where it's like, I kind of hope my system of thought here is wrong, because if it is wrong, then that means that for the last 2,000 years, philosophers haven't been chasing their tails for an ideal of truth that makes no sense. So, and I'm not saying that, I mean, that's not meant to be some narcissistic statement or anything like that. I can't break this system, and it freaks me out. So, and my wife's very intelligent, so I've been having her try and break it, and we've ran through scenario after scenario after scenario, and we can't break it, and everything just meshes together like a jigsaw puzzle, and it's freaky, and it's like, how did people miss this for 2,000 years? So anyway, that's the book that I'm working on. I don't want to spoil it before I get it actually the thoughts down and published. So that's been a little side project. See, even the side projects I work on aren't little things. I like to, if something's wrong, I want to fix it. And that's why I'll talk about my wife's health issues really quick, because I can't fix that. But anyway, it looks like she has something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it would make sense because, well, she also has celiac, and that's kind of what caused the SIBO. And that's just hyper gluten sensitivity. So anytime she'd eat any grains, and not even like just wheat, but any grains, that it causes inflammatory issues in her body. So anyway, over X amount of time, some unknown period of time, decade or more, of consuming grains, not knowing that she was celiac, caused this thing called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it's something always causes SIBO, from what I've heard. It's not like a standalone thing, but it's your normal gut bacteria kind of growing out of control, growing up into your small intestine, and I think even maybe your stomach. And this bacteria literally eats all of your nutrition, and as a result of its metabolic processes, produces toxins. So you get, you eat healthy food, you could have a superfood smoothie with 12 different superfoods in it, and the bacteria love that, and they eat that, and they leave you with very little of that, and then they essentially, the bacterial equivalent of defecate inside of your gut and leave you with enterotoxins, neurotoxins, things of that nature. So anyway, food is poisoning her, and which is why I think carnivore diets to a point work for people that have autoimmune issues. I've heard, I had a customer contact with me when all of this happened, and he said, hey, this carnivore diet thing, it helps control autoimmune issues, and people are having success with it. And I'd heard about that. I think Joe Rogan or somebody was talking about that, and it's like, it's worth a try. My wife, honestly, not too into eating meat, but it's like, if it's that or death, it'd be worth a try. But would make sense why the carnivore diet would work anyway, because the bacteria eats carbohydrate, sugar, starch, things, just carbohydrate in general is what causes it to proliferate itself. So by not consuming carbohydrate, you essentially starve it. So, and then your autoimmune symptoms go down, because my wife's autoimmune symptoms would manifest in, her hair, she would have hair loss. Her nails would thin. Her gums would flare up like with inflammation, almost like mild scurvy and things like this. And as it turns out, if you have an inflamed gut, or you eat too much zinc, you don't absorb copper. And if you don't absorb enough copper, you can't properly metabolize iron. And if you can't properly metabolize iron, then guess what? You're not getting vitamin C either. So it all comes together. It all the pieces fall into place, which would be why when she took prednisone, it exacerbated her the symptoms to the point where she couldn't walk. It's because this bacteria grew out of control from suppressing her immune system in her gut, which was trying to control it. So anyway, we hope we're on the upswing of that. Good supplements, good things happening, and lots of B12, B vitamins, avoiding the carbohydrates, and she has to take a course of an antibiotic called Xifaxan or Xifaxan, something like that. That's It's like 3 pills a day for 2 weeks, and that doesn't always clear it up. Sometimes you have to do it longer. It's not a normal antibiotic. The antibiotic, the one course, the 2-week course was like a $4,000 antibiotic. It's crazy. So anyway, that's where we are with that. And I definitely appreciate everyone's concerns and all the questions and all the, just everybody really pulling for a recovery out there, and all the prayers, and appreciate it all. So I hope everyone has a fantastic new year, and I will see you next time. Oh, and Andrew at KimmonsHandTools.com if you want awesome tools. And I don't know when my book will come out, when I finish it. I'm about halfway done. So if anybody's interested in that, cool. Have a good one.